we needed a change in US position. We certainly needed much more assistance on the humanitarian side, and some would say on the military side. Some people interpret this as a big change in US policy, and of course, if you've been sort of following behind the scenes the debate that's been going on amongst administration folks about providing direct assistance over the last 7 or 8 months, I would say, then this is actually quite an achievement. But, and there is a big but here, in the overall scheme of things, biscuits and band-aids are not going to dramatically affect the situation on the ground. So it's for its significance and perhaps for its promise that this could be seen as quite a significant shift. In my view, though, the US needs to do much, much more. The Friends of Syria, you know, is now meeting, just met for the 5th time. In fact, February 2012 was the first time it met. And the demands of the opposition have been pretty much the same. What we should note, though, and what's changed, the number of people killed. When it first met last February, about 7,500 people have been killed, according to the United Nations. That figure is now dramatically risen to close to 70, 80, perhaps even 100,000. The number of refugees at that particular time was about 21,000, according again to the United Nations. That figure is now knocking on 1 million people. So you can see the great need that there is, and the need for a coalition of member states like the Friends of Syria to do much, much more. And that's now perhaps where we need the US leadership. I think it would be too much to conclude at this point in time that having started giving direct assistance, we're now going to see some sort of a military intervention from the United States. Certainly the administration is still talking against providing arms, let alone providing any kind of force on the ground. I think where the US can make a qualitative difference here, whilst this debate goes on, is in terms of providing training and assistance to the in military terms to the rebels on the ground. What is clear is that they are disorganized. There is a military command structure, but that could do with a lot more support and also logistical and intelligence support. I think this kind of effort could have some demonstrable effect on the ground, and it could be, I think, it could very well bring in key regional states in support of that, and here I mentioned particularly Turkey and Jordan. It has been more extreme elements who, with support, perhaps even from outside actors, have been now taking the fight to the regime. So particularly Jabhat al-Nusra, which is considered to be somewhat closely affiliated with al-Qaeda in Iraq and certainly inspired by some of its tactics. We now do see them filling the security and political vacuum. And can I say, speaking recently to some tribal leaders in the north and east of the country in Syria, they are now telling us how Jabhat al-Nusra, perhaps having learned from its experience in Iraq, where the Iraqi tribes actually turned against them, have now been purposely going out and trying to make nice with some of these tribal coalitions and actually achieving some success. They are also the ones who are providing the relief aid, the wheat, the flour, the fuel that people are in desperate need of. And on top of that, they have been strategically taking over some of the oil-producing fields, which has allowed them to generate an income by selling that oil across the borders. And so, you know, we are now in a situation whereby which, certainly in the eastern part and the northern part of the country, it may well be that Jabhat al-Nusra is really the first amongst equals and in control in provinces such as Deir ez-Zor on the Iraqi border, as Hasaka, which borders both Iraq and Turkey, as well as Raqqa. That is a whole area to the east of the Euphrates River, in which we don't have control, neither does the regime, but groups like Jabhat al-Nusra do. Assad is pretty confident that the Russians are going nowhere, and neither are the Iranians, of course. And it's that confidence which is telling him and his regime that they can stick this out and that they can ultimately even win the battle that they are facing. Russia wants a political solution, but where I think we've seen the limitations of the approach is the insistence that the regime and opposition somehow dramatically come to some sort of an understanding for a transitional government, which could hold out the hope that Assad could even run for elections again in the future. That is simply not going to fly with the majority of Syrians who are now fighting against this regime, let alone, of course, the Syrian opposition. And also, we really have to ask ourselves, when a regime is firing Scud missiles and using all sorts of weaponry against its people, will it really negotiate in good faith? There is nothing in its record which tells us that.